let me just interrupt. Last year, I've actually gone to what in essence is the deliberative session, the budget session for people who still have town meeting. And the first year I went, there were 17 people in the audience. The second year I went, there were probably about 40 because there was a hot button issue. Last year I went, and it was myself and one other person who showed up at the meeting. There were 50 some odd people in the room, but they were all town employees who were there to answer any questions we might have. And our town manager got up and said, see, this is what, if you want to know what a deliberative session and Senate Bill 2 looks like, this is it. And I stood up and said, so why wouldn't we have Senate Bill 2? I don't understand. You know, why wouldn't we give people a secret ballot? Because obviously this isn't working for the town meeting panel either. 2 people show up at this session, 2 people show up at an SB2 session. What's the difference? The only difference is you get to vote in secret in Senate Bill 2.
And Tom, you know, I should mention my mom worked very hard to try to get SB2 passed. And for those folks who just moved to the state, SB2 in its first form, Senate Bill 2, was a little bit different. You know, we'll show you the perfidy of some of the people in the State House because SB2 originally required a supermajority to pass in the ballot on the final vote to pass budget initiatives. The next year, I think, some of the state reps, especially the sort of more so-called rhinos out there, and one of them, Cynthia Dockmo, is from my town, who's been in there a little bit too long, I think. She needs to relax a little. They proposed that it was just too difficult to get spending issues passed. So they had to do something. So instead of the supermajority, it now fell to a 60% majority and to pass those. And in my case, in our town, guess what? The budget passed the next year when it wouldn't have if we had been under the original SB2. And the thing about SB2 that's fascinating is, as Howard mentioned, the towns signed on to SB2, and they can still do so if they so desire. When they signed on to SB2, they signed on to it on the pretext, on the understanding that SB2 required a supermajority. Then the legislature changed SB2 for those towns that had already signed on to it, understanding that it was going to mean one thing. They changed the meaning of it afterwards. And it was just incredibly deceptive, really, really bad. And the other thing that's fascinating about it is that under the town meeting system, which some towns still have, the towns, you would be there till 2 in the morning, 1 in the morning, because the vested interests stay. They stay. Throwing out amendments. Okay, we're going to talk about this amendment. Throwing out this idea, we're going to talk about this idea. And they do it intentionally, knowing that the people who are there got to get up and actually work to pay their stinking taxes. So the SB2 allows for the people who can't make it, or the people who would just be exhausted, to at least go in and vote afterwards and say, I'm going to negate this, which is a nice thing.
Gardner touched on a very interesting point. It's more common under the traditional town meeting. Years ago, there used to be a state senator from Newport named Harry Spanos, and he's long since gone. But what would happen is you would hold a night meeting. They would start at 7, and somewhere around 9, 10 o'clock, people start drifting out and going home. Well, they had voted down a bond issue in Newport to build a school, big bucks, and people went home. At 11:30, when the hall was down to 25 people instead of hundreds and hundreds, Harry Spanos got up and moved to reconsider the vote on the bond issue. The reconsideration motion passed. They revoted the bond issue, and it passed. And people got up the next day, and when they read their union leader, they saw that the school they had voted down through a parliamentary maneuver in the 11th hour now had passed, and they were going to be saddled with paying for it. And from that date forward, Harry Spanos, who had been dubbed by the union leader as Midnight Harry. That name stuck with him for the rest of his life. But that happens. These are some of the parliamentary maneuverings that go on at town meeting. And yes, the town employees are there, the school employees are there. That's one of the things that Senate Bill 2 has helped eliminate, is because you vote a month later in the voting booth and nobody else sees how you vote. Sure, there's still some political machinations. Town meeting wouldn't be the same without it, but this is eliminated.